the seminar. And so my name is Kevin Palache. So I'm the founder of Palache Family Solutions. So I've been pretty much sharing these topics. So obviously today's talk is on kind of personal development, but also I've talked about goal setting. Time management 101 is like another one of our seminars. We do seminars now. A new one that we're developing is on consistency. And so it's kind of like an offshoot of my personal business, which obviously some of you know I'm in legal field. So I've been doing that now for over 20 years. And just in the process of personal growth, over the last 20 years, we've come up with these different, kind of training topics and workshops and seminars. And one of the foundational ones is absolutely, the power of personal development. So for folks who haven't met before, I went to school actually here in Bloomfield. So I went to when there was a junior high school. I went to junior high school here. Went on there from there to go to Bloomfield High School, and then graduated from Bloomfield High School to be first generation college student. So I went to University of Connecticut up at Stores and studied finance when I was there. And when I graduated from UConn, I didn't have any intent to read another book, right? So I was like one of those people. When I grew up, it was kind of like reading was like almost like punishment. So if my dad saw me watching a little too much TV, right, like go read a book, So like that is this almost negative association, right? With me, I didn't read for pleasure, didn't read to learn. Like if it wasn't like mandatory for UConn or for high school, right? I didn't really pick up any extra books. And we'll talk about later, like the importance of like associations, because of my associations with my legal service business. And even when I was working in corporate America, one of the first books I read when I graduated from UConn was Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. Some of you may have heard that book. And it was like a positive peer pressure. So you always hear peer pressure when you think negative, right? When you think of peer pressure. But it was almost it was a positive peer pressure because like the folks I had lunch with pretty much every day, all they kept talking about was this book, right? Rich Dad Poor Dad, Rich Dad Poor Dad. And I felt left out. And so as a result, I decided to pick up the book, right? And went and bought it from Kinko's or whatever, right? Bought the book and read it. I was really intrigued by the messaging, from that book. But when I got involved in Legal Shield, one of the kind of components of our organization is that we have a book of the month, right? And it's not necessarily required, right? But it's like highly recommended, right? And you absolutely feel left out, right? If you're not keeping up with the book of the month, because like every conversation that we have, whether it's a Zoom or in person, people give insights on what they got from the book. So as a result of that, I really kind of almost like fell in love with, personal development. And so ever since then, whether it's the book or, I prefer personally, we'll talk about the different pillars of personal development, right? I focus on audiobooks a lot, for how I kind of learn and get the information best for me. But as a result of that, I'm a different person today, obviously, than I was 20 plus years ago, right? And I can't imagine where I would be, right, if I didn't kind of follow this path, right, of personal development. So before I jump in, I know you've already introduced yourself, but if you could share and even feel free to jump in too. I appreciate the Bloomfield Library hosting this event today as well. It seems very appropriate being in the library and all that we're talking about personal development. But if you can, just share your name and just one thing you hope to get from either the seminar or maybe one thing that you're looking to work on in terms of your personal development, right? So whatever you want to share is with respect to that. But Michelle, you'd like to go first, lead the way.
Repeat what we're supposed to do.
But what's one thing you hope to get out of the seminar? Yep, okay. That's it.
Hello, everyone. So Rochelle Palache, and one thing I'd like to get out of the seminar is best tips on tracking what I'm reading. So whether it's journaling or whatever, different things to make sure I'm retaining the information I'm learning.
The retention, awesome.
My name is Magdalena, and I'm retiring tomorrow.
Wow!
Congratulations.
Wow.
So the power of personal development. I said, well, this is like a new journey for me.
Yeah.
And I figured, I'm sure I'll pick something up today. I'm not sure what it's going to be, but it's interesting to me.
Awesome. And what type of work were you doing before?
I was a secretary in the school system. I worked for 25 years for Harvard Schools. Yeah. And then for the past 4 years, I've been in Enfield Public Schools.
Wow.
And it's time.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Beach time.
Congratulations. Yeah.
That's awesome. Good stuff.
I am Rachel from the lab, and we stay focused. Have so much in front of you. You kind of focus in and prioritize that.
Awesome. Yeah, and then since we have the hybrid, we even go on the Zoom as well. And for folks on the virtual, if you're in a position to do so, if you can, hold on one second, if you can unmute your audio and your video if you like to, right? So I mean, if you got your rollers in already, then
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you like to be on video, you can feel free to jump on video too. But same thing, if you guys share, I guess with Steve and Darrell, just your name and just one thing you hope to get from the seminar.
Okay, I'll go. So I'm Jarrell.
Ladies first.
Okay, I'm Jarrell. For me, it's just more like kind of like reorganizing. Because I have an entrepreneurship company that's like STEM education, so it's kind of more like reorganizing and being a little bit less. I totally wasn't a procrastinator, but Kevin and I went to college together, so I've known Kevin for a long time. But yeah, so for me, it's just like my goals. I have a lot of them, so just trying to like accomplish more of my goals this year. I mean, I've accomplished a lot already, but accomplishing more of my goals so I could kind of get where I need to in terms of like my company and my business and things of that sort. But yeah, so for me, I joined because I know Kevin, and then I just wanted to like hear his viewpoints on personal development and then see what I can learn as well. You always learn. So I myself as an educator, my background is an engineer and I have my doctorate in engineering. So I teach at the university, but also do like some nonprofit work through my company for K through 12 education, STEM education.
Awesome.
And
awesome.
I don't live in, too bad you didn't have this like 2 weeks ago because I was in Connecticut, Kevin. So I would have been in person.
Oh.
Since Bloomfield is home. So I came home for my brother and sister's birthdays and stuff. So, but yeah, I'm back in Virginia now. I live in Virginia. So, yep. I would show my face, but I don't have rollers, but I don't look my best today. So,
All right, we don't. Steve definitely doesn't have any rollers yet, but yeah. Thanks for joining. Yeah.
yep.
Steve.
All right. Hi. I don't need no rollers, but anyway. Yeah. My name's Stephen Taff. Yes, I what I would like to get back from this is just a different perspective, and it's kind of like I guess put me back in focus because I've been doing the daddy daycare thing right now, so I just want to get back in laser focus. So and I love hearing different perspectives.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, good stuff. Well, I appreciate you guys jumping on. So yeah, feel free if you have questions as we go through. Be obviously pretty interactive. That'd be fine. You can feel free to jump in. So this is basically that was the whole point of this slide here is to really find out what are you looking to get out of the event today. And so now as we go through today, I'm going to share like several kind of like philosophies and some of my favorite quotes that I've kind of seen and heard over the years. And I love this one specifically because it ties right into personal development, right? What lies behind us and what lies ahead of us are tiny matters compared to what lies within us. And the whole point of that is there's greatness within us, right? And so oftentimes we have to develop that greatness, right? Our potential. And a big part of that is making sure that we are in the right environment, right? So just like a plant can't go in the wrong environment, right? For us personally, whether it's the people that we're associating ourselves with or things that we let in our head, right? That determines how far and how far we can go long term. So we'll talk about today, what is personal development? We'll talk about the 4 pillars of personal development and it'd be homework, right? We'll talk about action steps as well. So even at the end of this, we'll even ask people, what's like one thing that you can take away? So as you're looking at it, right, not just looking at kind of the workshop or the presentation, but think about, okay, what is like one thing I can take away and be able to apply in your personal life from day to day? So another philosophy, and again, you probably saw this in the information that we shared earlier as we promoted for today's event. And it's one of my favorite quotes by Zig Ziglar, right? And it ties again right into personal development, right? If you're not willing to learn, no one can help you. But if you're determined to learn, no one can stop you. And unfortunately, sometimes we get into a place of like learned helplessness, right? Where you're just like, I can't fill in the blank, right? So I can't achieve whatever particular goal. I can't achieve this ideal, health status, right? I can't get that promotion of the job, right? And oftentimes because we have neglected, right, the importance of that personal growth and development. But the mindset here is if you're willing to learn, no one can stop you, right? If you're willing to learn, if you're willing to get better, right, there's out, and especially nowadays, right, in the information age, right, anything that you want to learn, you have access to at your fingertips, right? And so, but it's a mindset there. So what is personal development, right? So I always start with defining it. This is our trusted source, Wikipedia, right? It's what personal development is, right? But I love this definition, right? Personal development is what's the key word here? Process, right? So we say it's a process, it's not an event, right? So it's not like I read the book, right? Or listened to the audio or went to the event and now I'm personally developed. Right? The mindset here is that it's a continuous process, right, over extended period of time. So it's a process through which an individual improves themselves. And here's the key thing, and those who are in their environment, right? And so as you get better, right, you find the people around you just inherent, right, in their relationship with you get better as well. It involves the making of goals or benchmarks that help define the path that you intend to follow. And so Jim Rohn, who's someone I followed since earlier, in my kind of career here, even with Legal Shield. And one of the things he shares, and this is as it relates to personal growth and improvement, he says, I will take care of me for you if you will take care of you for me. Now, this is kind of a flip on something that we probably heard before, right? You scratch my back, I'll scratch yours. It's kind of what it sounds like, right? But if you look at it carefully, right, I'll take care of me for you. Right? If you only promise me that you'll take care of you for me. And so as I get better, right? So as I become a better parent, a better spouse, a better member of the community, better in business, whatever it is, right? Better health-wise, because of just your association with me, you'll get better. But at the same time, I need you to also promise me that you'll take care of you for me, right? Because of my association with you, as you get better in any area of your life, right? I'm going to ultimately get better as well. And so this is, Warren Buffett, a quote by Warren Buffett. And I don't know the full story, but as the story goes, right, Warren Buffett, who you guys know is a multi-billionaire, he's done well for himself, right? And the question was asked, what's your, what was the best investment you've ever made? And, thinking that, obviously as someone who invests in the market, it'll be like a specific stock or a company or index fund or something. And basically the story goes that his response was not any of those things, right? He said the best investment you can make is an investment in yourself, right? The more you learn, the more you will earn, right? And so I've heard it stated that if you pour into your mind will then pour into your wallet or into your purse, right? So as you develop yourself. And so what are the 4 pillars of personal development? And these are, again, notes you can take and get better at. And as I go through the 4 pillars, I'm going to kind of tie it in. So one of the things I shared is that, we're going to talk about how to really, create some systems to achieve your goals. And so how many people have heard of Atomic Habits? Have you guys all heard of Atomic Habits, right? It was like the #1 best-selling book on Amazon. I think it was like for 2 or 3 consecutive, like across all categories. So I've heard of, right? You would think it would be just thinking, but it's like across all categories, which really speaks to the fact that so many people out there are looking for ways to develop good habits and stop bad habits, right? It's the whole premise of the book. But James Clear, one of the things he shares in that book, he says, you do not rise to the level of your goals. You, in fact, actually fall to the level of your systems, right? Because we all have great goals, right? So maybe it's a health goal, maybe it's a financial goal, right? All these different goals that we have. But, he said that's nice, right, to have those lofty goals, but you actually fall to the level of your system. So the question always then becomes, what systems do you have in place to support that goal that you set for yourself? Right. And so as we look at personal development, these 4 pillars, right, I'm going to actually share some specific systems they can use, right, to get better, in your personal development journey. So number 1, surprise, surprise, right? The books that you read, right? So the books that you read. And so if you're looking to get better, does someone have a question or am I? I'll go ahead. Was that Steve?
No. Sorry, someone's talking to me. Sorry.
Okay. Right. So that's number 1, right? So the books that you read. So I'm going to give some, some kind of guidelines you can put together. So if you're looking to get better, for example, as it relates to personal development, how much time are we putting in, right, in those areas? So this is kind of like a guideline that we follow to make sure we're consistent in our journey. And so it could be reading 10 pages a day. And I always share any number greater than 0, you're heading at least in the right direction, right? So if you can't do 10, do 5. You can't do 5, do 1. Now, you're not going to break any records, but you will eventually finish the book, right? And so it might be 10 pages a day. It might be 30 minutes a day. Maybe you could read an hour. Maybe you could read for only 15 minutes, right? But again, any number greater than 0. And then the key thing is, as you are reading, being cognizant of not only what you're reading, but asking yourself, what are some of the top tips that you can get from the actual book, and how will you actually implement it? How will you actually apply it in your life, or for folks who are business owners, right, in their business? How do you do that, right? You schedule time to read, right? Does anyone here have like reading in their schedule, like in your calendar, or it just kind of happens haphazard, right? Most likely haphazard, right?
At night, right before bed.
Right, at bedtime. Right, and that's good, right? So we'll talk about it later, but there's something called habit stacking, right? And that's actually a good habit. So it's like basically habit stacking. While you do one thing that you do naturally, you tack on something else, right? And you now have habit stack, right? You're creating a new habit based on the foundational habit. So hopefully everyone here brushes their teeth in the morning and at night, right? Or all these things, these like behaviors and these habits that we have. Is that how can we add that on? So if that for you, maybe you have a book by your, by your bed, at night. So as you go to bed, it's just sitting right there, right? Which is something we learned in Atomic Habits, right? You've got to make it easy, right, to do, make it visible, right? So then you just pick up the book and maybe you read until you fall asleep. So that's a great habit. Most people are not doing that, probably, right? Most people, they're in bed and maybe they're watching TV, or maybe they're scrolling through social media, right? And they're reading, but nothing beneficial, most likely, right? So that's actually a good example of what we call habit stacking, right? But the key way to make sure it happens, to start, is to actually schedule that time to read. So one of the philosophies I have is that you have to calendar your commitment, right? So you have to calendar your commitment. So whatever it is that you're committed to should be reflected in your calendar. Now, that's a whole other, we do like a time management one-on-one training where we actually talk about, because the assumption is you actually have a calendar, right? Which is not necessarily the case for many people. They just kind of float through life. And it's like, I know I'm working for, 8 to 10 hours, and I'm going home and I'm be hanging out watching TV or Facebook or, Instagram the rest of the night, right? And that's their calendar, right? So, but if you're trying to be intentional in achieving a specific goal, it behooves you, right, to have a calendar, right? Some sort of a system in place for that. So schedule time to read, make sure it's somewhere in your calendar. Again, not 15 minutes, that 30 minutes, whether you do in the morning, afternoon, evening, right? Make sure you have it. So it's not going to happen by happenstance, right? A book is not going to come hit you in the head, right? and force you to read it, right? You've got to be intentional with it. So here's another habit stack, right? So I know we heard one, which is basically having that book next to your bed as you're, before you go to bed. But feed your body, feed your mind, right? So this is another habit stack that I've utilized over the years. So basically, how this works is that hopefully you're eating at some point, right, during the course of the day, right? Whether you're fasting or not, right? Maybe you're skipping breakfast, you're just having lunch or dinner. But assuming you're having breakfast, lunch, or dinner, the mindset here is that as you're eating your breakfast, as you're eating your lunch, as you're eating your dinner, right, you have your book, right? Or maybe you have your audio book playing, during that time frame, right? So that's a habit stack, right? Feed your body, feed your mind. It's a real easy one to remember, because hopefully you're eating during the course of the day. And as you're doing that, specific as relates to reading, now we have things on Kindle. We'll talk about Hoopla, which is free through the library. So not only do you have audiobooks, but you also have a lot of books that are available basically similar to Kindle, like whether it's PDF or that version that's right on your phone, that's free and accessible, right, at all times, right, which is cool, right? So we have access to that, right? So join a book of the month club. So just like we have through our organization, a book of the month. I know at the library, I recommend books all the time, right? But join the book of the month club, and that really is great because it helps you to really get something out of the books that you're reading. So instead of just kind of reading it, it kind of forces you, because like you have that book of the month meeting, right? Whether you're meeting once a month or once a week or every day or whatever it is, you gotta have something to talk about, right? You can't be like, oh man, the book is really great. What's good about it? So the whole point of the book of the month is for you to have like specific things that you can pull from that book that you can share with the rest of the group. So, and that ties right into, sharing tips with friends and family and it becomes a more part, like after a while, you feel like you thought of all that stuff, right? So the more you share it, right, especially if it's the same thing you're sharing over and over again, it almost feels like you're the one who thought of it, right? But and that's a good thing because now it's more of a part of you, right? It's helping you to kind of change your mindset in that process. And so let's get, some examples. What are some like really good books that you guys have read? Any real good book recommendations you guys have that like, man, you got to read this particular? And if you're on the virtual, you could jump in too. But any books that you are like, man, this book absolutely changed my life, right? Highly recommend. Anyone have any books that jump out?
I mean, I read Where the Crawdads Sings. Where the Crawdads Sing.
Yep, that's right.
I mean, it was a good book. It's not like I really learned something. It was just a good book that I
Entertaining,
really,
yeah.
really enjoyed. That's just one I can think of.
On top of your head. Oh, okay.
12 Week Year.
12-week year. Okay. It's a good one too.
Tuesdays with Lori.
The Alchemist.
The Alchemist. And what's like your top insight from those books?
It's just, they stay with you as like life lessons, like ways to view life. And it's something you can always go back to at a different age and get something different out of it.
Awesome. Yeah, that's huge. Like when you able to go back, so even like Atomic Habits, it was like a couple of years ago when I first listened, and it has a completely different meaning now. Like that I've actually applied some of those things that have, I'm like, wow, like just doing you're making that one little adjustment has completely changed my habits over the last couple of years. Every time you listen to it, you could add one more thing, maybe from that book or from the audio. Anyone in the virtual want to share like your number one book and why?
I have two. Called Persuasion: A Revolutionary Way to Influence and Persuade, and Influence: The Psychology of Persuasion, and the Revised Edition. That's about it.
Okay. And what was like your top nugget from those books? Or one of those books?
Well, it made me think about because it really like tells you how you could utilize persuasion for your business in a sense, and how to see it in your daily life. Like it kind of like tells you the psychological, and it tells you the like how they use it and how you can use it, but not to manipulate it in a way that is dishonest. Because how everything is now, like they're trying to just get you to get something even though you don't want it. You know what I mean? And it's more like how, I guess that's the most I got from it was the persuasion part about it, and how to utilize it and how to see it in your life or in your work.
Nice. Good stuff. Yeah, thanks for sharing. Use it for good, not evil, right?
Yes, pretty much because they show you the evil and the good.
Anyone else on the virtual like to share like the number one book and what they got?
Oh, I always like the book, The Purpose Driven Life, because to me, I've read it at so many different stages in my life. So it's really just like, an inspirational book. Um, and it really helps you, especially I think the first time I read it, I might have been in college or before college. And I feel like I've read it like 3 or 4 other times after, and it just, my perspective on life, it hasn't changed completely, but it just, it's a self-help book, but it's a spiritual book. So it helps you to kind of just figure out why God, put you on earth and what is your purpose. So I like that. I had to come up to my library. I was in my kitchen. Um, Kevin, so I had to come up to my library, Boundaries. I'm looking at my books because I was like, I have so many books. I just don't. I have a lot of favorite books, but Boundaries is a good book. I remember my sister giving me that one. That one just really helps you, I think, at all stages, like how to kind of like, develop yourself, and set boundaries with your work, with people, with just everything. And I think somebody had said Tuesday with Maury, I like that book. I read it, but another book that I remember reading over and over, The Five People You Meet in Heaven by Mitch Albom. That's a really good book. I have a lot of books, The Law of Happiness, and I have a lot of like financial books too, but I can't find them right now. But another one that I learned a lot of is a quick read by like one of the top Mary Kay people. I used to do Mary Kay back in the day. Quantum Leap, and it's like the 10 steps to help you soar. And I think you kind of said this already, Kevin, but where you end up in life is entirely up to you. And that's mostly what that book is about. But yeah, I have a lot of books. Most of my books are self-help or financial books.
Yeah, that's important. And who's the author for Boundaries?
Boundaries was Dr. Henry Cloud and Dr. John Towson. I could take a picture and like send it.
Yeah,
I don't know if I.
yeah, my wife was asking. I'm like, that sounds good. Like, yeah, boundaries, because we all need that, right? Especially
Yeah, I
now.
think my
I've heard that book before. That's a good book. I heard people were telling me
yeah, I
about
think
it.
my sister Maria told me about that many years ago because she does like mindfulness and all that type of stuff. So yeah, I was trying to get them to be on the call too, Kevin. I told my whole entire family, but Natasha said if you're recording it, she wants to hear it, like the recording, so I could share it with them.
Oh,
Yeah, we'll
since you mentioned like 30 books, I have what other book?
No, I have a lot of books. The good one that my brother-in-law my brother-in-law gave me, and I never really finished reading it, like 3 birthdays ago, by Viola Davis, is Finding Me. That's a good book, but I haven't really finished read it yet, and that
Oh,
was 3 years ago. I don't read as much as I used to, but I have a lot of books. I probably have had over like 2,000 books. I have a lot of books. I
you
got
guys
rid of some of them. Yeah.
you guys probably heard this one, The Richest Man in Babylon. That's an old
Oh
book.
yeah, that's a good
Yeah,
book.
that's a classic because I feel like you know, like how you were talking about Rich Dad, Poor Dad. Because I read that book too, but
Me too.
like, but when you read Richest, you know, The Richest Man in Babylon, it's like you feel like some of the stuff he's saying, like you know, relates to that book, and you know, or like I was broke and now I'm not. That other book that's kind of like someone who did a Dave Ramsey class and pretty much made a book out of it.
Mm.
He literally like has to like quote that he took the Dave Ramsey course and all that stuff in there, and this is his version of, you know, his interpretation of how you could become financially free.
Mm. That sounds like a good one.
Oh yeah, it is. Yeah, I did it at my church. And another book is good, but it's not financial, but it's called The Five Love Languages.
Oh yeah, I love that. I have that here. I have
Yeah,
that one. Yeah, it's right next to my
I,
boundaries, actually. Yep.
I got it, and they have a children's one. They have a children's one too. Like if you have children, like so you can identify your children's love languages, and because especially how children are always changing, so they're
That's
like
actually really good. I never
their
knew
love
that. That's a
language
good book.
will change during like, you know, adolescent, you know, like when they're from toddlers to, you know, preteens to teenagers to young adults.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to get the children book. That makes a lot of sense. I like that.
Yeah, and then also like they tell you, like, you know, if you do the five, like how like you say you read it before, but like something has changed in your life, you know, like say like how I didn't have kids before and then we end up having kids like later on, and how our love language has changed because of having a child.
Mhm.
And then because we like did like we redid it, and then my score was different than it was before because
Wow.
I could imagine that. Yeah, I could imagine that. That makes sense. Wow.
Yeah, so that was awesome. So I'm glad. Yeah, and I love always hearing different people's perspectives on like books that really made an impact right on their life and their way of thinking and the way of living. And then yeah, I know the question came up in terms of I know Jarrell about the replay. So there is on the YouTube. Is that what you're saying?
I was gonna say, I can transcribe
Yeah.
and books everyone listed
Oh.
and send it out
Oh, nice.
because we're recording.
Okay, yeah. And Rachel said, yeah, she'll be able to kind of make a list of all the books that everyone mentioned and then be able to send that out afterwards. So yeah, awesome. Anyone else on it?
Perfect.
I think we got one. All right, awesome. Let me move this back over here. All right, good stuff. So yeah, thanks for definitely on sharing that. So Mortimer Adler, and this was really impactful for me too, because we see oftentimes people are focused on how many books they are reading or have read. Like you have some people like, oh, I read a book a week, or I read a book a month, or every two. Like some people are like, you know, literally every couple of days they're reading a book. So this really kind of really speaks to the importance of focus on getting from the book, not just through the book. Right. So he said in the case of good books, the point is not to see how many of them you can get through, but rather how many can get through to you. Like, so even what you guys are just even sharing, whether it's on the Zoom or in person, like those books that you mentioned, I know Steve mentioned that the book he read and how like he changed, like just taking that test again like how things change, after having a child. And that's the whole point, right, of personal development, right? Is to really be intentional about not only the information you're getting in, but like what you're getting from the book, right? Not just saying, oh, let me just check it off, right? 5 books read this month, right? But it's like, no. Can you share with me what you're getting, right, from each one of those books that you're reading, right? And so to help me, with that process, this kind of helped me as well, right? And I think all of us can agree that education can give you a completely different perspective, right, on life, right? And so you got to stay on the books, right, the personal development. And so what I found myself doing, especially when I first really started engaging in personal development, like I had a lot of like businessy books, right? I'm put it that way, right? So I mean that like pretty much every book I read or every audio I listened to was like efficiency, time management, goal setting, leadership, like everything like business, related. That's like all I was reading. Now, how did I know that? It's because I started to track it, right? So we talked about, right, you fall to the level of your systems. So one of the systems that I had to develop over the years is a very simple one, is just simply literally keeping track, right, of every book and audiobook, right? Either audio I was listening to or book I was reading. And so simple way to do that, if you have Google Drive. So like I have in my phone, like a folder that says personal development. And in that folder, right, I read to you, like I have Audible in here, I have Hoopla in here, Kindle in here, right? But also what I have in here is a link to like I have it in Dropbox. You do the same thing in Google Drive, but it's called Book Notes. And so basically what I started doing is that, first of all, I have an Excel spreadsheet that literally has like the date, right? I finished listening to the audio or read the book, the name of it, the author. And then I actually keep track of how many times I've read the book or listened to the audio as well. So like in that field, I'll actually put like if it's multiple times, because obviously if it's an important book, if it's made a huge impact on you, you want to like become almost like a student, right, of that book, right? Or even have the author. Like if you want to really go deep, you're like, let me get every book, right, that author has ever written or that audiobook they've already put together, because I really want to become almost like an expert on that particular topic. So that helped me a lot, because when I started keeping track, I was like, wait a second, right? Now there's too many businessy books on here, right? I got to mix it up, right? So, but I know it'd be hard for you guys to see in the Zoom, but like you can kind of get an idea, like these are all like different books or audiobooks. Yeah, so books I've read or audiobooks I've listened to. So each one of these files obviously is like a Microsoft Word document. I guess I could go up close to this. I guess you guys can get an idea. Right, here you go. Right, so literally it's just different books, audio. And this is just, a couple of years ago, I actually started doing it. I'm like, man, why didn't I do this from the very beginning? But as you can see, it just really forced me to be intentional about, personal development and like what I'm getting, not just getting through the book, but actually from the book. And so what I do, and I focus, for me personally, what works best is audiobooks. Like, so I'm really big, I'm constantly listening. My wife knows, right? Constantly listening, to audiobooks, during the course of the day. But what I like to do is just take notes as I'm listening to it. Like, okay, what are some key points I'm getting? And then what I like to do after that is, after I'm done taking the notes, that then as I'm habit stacking, right? So as I'm having breakfast, lunch, or dinner, I literally can open up my book notes and read the notes I took on the audio I listened to. So like to reinforce even more. So I listened to the audio, I took notes on the audio. Now I'm reading the notes I took on the audio book. So again, it's really making it, kind of deeper level of learning, right? And reinforcing exactly what we've heard. So in any event, so when I started to track it, right? And this is one thing that John Maxwell said, you can't change what you don't track, right? And so if you want to get better in a thing, you have to start tracking that thing, right? So as a result of that, I started diversifying, right, the books and the audio. So I know some of you mentioned, some of these books here, but specifically, I know my wife highly recommended, right? But the five love languages, right, by Gary Chapman, right? So that's when I started kind of, mix things up in terms of, obviously the book that kind of started off was Rich Dad Poor Dad with Robert Kiyosaki. You can't talk about personal development without talking about mental health, right? So whether it's if it's you or if you have people in your family or friends that deal with mental health issues, like you might not even recognize it if you haven't done any personal development. So that's what I mentioned earlier. I'll take care of me for you if you take care of you for me. So you taking care of you, right, might be engaging in these levels of personal development. So as you get better and more conscious and cognizant of, maybe issues or challenges that people have, you could now be a better assistance to them because you've increased your knowledge base, right? So whether it's, things like that on mental health, ours, as I mentioned earlier, right, Atomic Habits by James Clear, Dr. Martin Luther King's, right, landmark speeches. Obviously, that's available in audiobook format during the pandemic, right? We all remember that, right? Like the kids were doing distance learning. Obviously, they're at home and they went through a lot of change. So one of the first books I started reading after I graduated was Who Moved My Cheese. It was a good confidence builder, right? Who Moved My Cheese. I don't know if us have read that one. But they actually had one specifically for kids. So it was like basically a homework assignment for the kids during the pandemic. They had to read the book. And then we actually sat down and we talked about, hey, what did you get from the book as relates to what's going on right now in the world, right? And we just kind of had a conversation about, hey, look, the cheese has moved, right? Things are different. You're not at school, you're not able to hang out with your friends, but how can we adapt? Or how can we make the best and maybe do more things virtually on Zoom or we end up taking a lot more walks together, those days, right? So The One Thing by Gary Keller, absolutely phenomenal, right? Basically the premise of that, what's the one thing I can do, which by doing it will make everything else easier or unnecessary. And basically it's some of you have heard of the Pareto principle, right? The 80-20 rule, right? 20% of what you do makes, 80% of the results, right? Gives you 80% of the results. And basically the one thing is basically taking that 20% that gives 80% of the result and taking 20% of that and 20% of that and 20% of that until you literally get to one thing that makes the most difference in your finances, in your health, in your business, in your retirement, right? In your retirement. There's gonna be one thing like, man, I gotta make sure in retirement that this one thing happens every single day, whether it's rest or maybe walking every day, right? So with everything, there's one thing, right? Health-wise, right? I wasn't reading any health books, right? It was all, again, business related. So I was like, started reading more. So it starts with food as an example of a good health book, right? So we talked about, so I'm glad you guys shared some of your books. This is just, I'll send this out via email afterwards for folks who do like with I don't know, I think I might have like a digital version of this survey. I'll look at it. But, after the workshop today, and I'll send you guys a copy of this and some other, helpful books. But it's good. So I started being intentional about different categories, right? Having, personal development, all those different areas. So that's pillar number one, right? So I spent a lot of time there because that's obviously foundational. Pillar number two, right, are obviously the audios we listen to. So as I mentioned before, Audible, great, to have. So I have like a huge Audible, library now of all these books I have. If you have a library card, which hopefully everyone does, right? And I believe this is across, so Virginia, it doesn't matter, anywhere in the country, they have a library card. Is that Google is available? Is that correct?
It's Libby actually that works with your Kindle.
Okay,
So,
Libby, okay.
And Libby, yes, on any device you can use those, and they're apps that you should go to your library website and make sure they have.
Mhm.
But if you want to read on your Kindle, you can actually use the Libby books for free.
Libby books, okay. All right, so Libby, we could probably put that in the chat for folks who are on the virtual, right? And we'll make sure, I guess, in the show notes or whatever, we'll make sure we have a link to that as well. So it's free. So the point is, when we kind of coach and work with people, we're like, there's no excuse, right? The information is free. So whether you just do a general Google search now with ChatGPT to learn something, or go to YouTube University, right, where like everything you need is there as well. But to get actual books or audiobooks, for the most part, not necessarily every book or every audio, but a good portion of them are available for free if you just simply have a library card. So here's some tips, right? Some things structure you can do to get better. So listening to maybe a minimum of 15 minutes a day, right? So that's a goal, right? Maybe if you use 30 minutes, maybe it's an hour, maybe it's 5 minutes, I don't know, right? But any number greater than 0 will help you get to that goal. Habit stack. So how do you habit stack as it relates to audiobooks? So we talked about earlier with physical books, with audiobooks while driving, while eating a meal, right? So feed your body, feed your mind. Getting ready for the day, right? So you're taking a shower in the morning, brushing your teeth in the morning, right? These are all, it's kind of like we call it dead time, right? There's nothing else going on during that time. So now you can habit stack, during that time. And that's a lot of time, right? So depending on how long it takes you to get ready in the morning, right? So Drive Time University, average person spends about an hour a day driving. Can we all agree with that? Especially if you're working full time somewhere, if you work if you work in Bloomfield, live in Bloomfield, maybe it's a little shorter commute, might be like a 5-minute commute to work. But the average person, right? Usually it's like, 25, 30 minutes, one way that a lot of people are driving to get to work. So when you look at that, an hour a day, that's 365 hours a year. And, break it down to what most of us are familiar with, that regular work weeks, that 40-hour weeks, that literally breaks down to 9 40-hour weeks. Right. And so you're looking at like a couple months worth of time, right, that you invested literally just driving around. So the question is, are you wasting that time that you're spending, or are you investing that time? Right. And it's okay to listen to music or whatever else is on the radio, whatever the case may be. But, what if you actually intentionally use that time, right, to say, hey, I'm going to get better at time management, I get better at my health, right? Let's learn more about what I can do to be better health-wise, right? If you focus on any one particular topic, you'll be like an expert, right, in that area. I promise you, with 365 hours, and then again, it might not be all 365, but 200 hours, you're going to be in whatever that is, right? You're going to be basically an expert, in that area, right, by the end of the year, if you're intentional about it. Paul Giamatti was, a multi-billionaire. He's one of the folks who was almost like credited with one of the first people to put a book on audio. And it was like literally the LP records, the old school records, but he actually put not just music, but put like an actual book on like on a record, right? So I don't know if he was the first person or one of the first people to actually think about doing that, but he absolutely, adamant about personal development and personal growth. But one of the recommendations he had is to listen to now, we don't have CDs anymore, right? Whatever the audio is, right? 6 or more times is like the number, right? He's like, if you listen to whatever that audio is 6 or more times, you like basically have ownership of whatever that audiobook is, right? You'll get it ingrained at that point. If you're listening to it, especially if you're studying it and taking notes on it, like it's a class, you will be an expert in that area. So that was like kind of the number, like a target, right? Obviously, any number greater than 0, you at least get some of the information, but the more you do repeat it, the more ingrained it becomes. It's called spaced repetition, right? Reduce hours watching, listening to maybe negative news where there's plenty of that going on, right? Maybe in programming, and make sure you have like an audio of the month. So we have a book of the month. And it might be the same one, right? The same thing that's available on book might be available on audio as well. We already talked about Hoopla Digital and Libby, those 2 apps. So here's a question. Can you listen to, 1 or more hours of audios, right, each and every single day, as it relates to personal development? Right. Spoiler alert, yes, you can. Right? And so what's an easy way to do that? And this is something, I don't know where I got the idea. I didn't even know these things existed, but everything's on Amazon, right? So I did a search for Bluetooth, so for waterproof Bluetooth speakers. So literally, again, this should be 100% participation, right? Hopefully everyone's taking a shower, right? Yeah, at least most days, right? Well, hopefully everything, right? But let's say it takes you 30 minutes between brushing your teeth, combing your hair, taking a shower, whatever, right? That's automatically 30 minutes, like in the morning, that you can get in, right? Using that, again, that quote unquote dead time, right? And and at that time, it was $10.99 at Amazon, right? It might be cheaper, maybe a little bit more, but it's not going to be much more than that, right? $11. I still have the same one I've had for years, right? So still kicking, right? Still working. And obviously rechargeable as well. Make sure it's dry though when you plug it. 30 minutes, right? It might be 10 minutes again. Habit stack, breakfast, lunch, dinner. As I mentioned before, it might be during your commute time, 1 hour there. So you can see where I'm just giving these examples to show you where very easily, without necessarily and this is the whole point here, you're not allocating time for it. Like you're literally doing it while you're doing something else anyway. So it's not like, oh, it's going to take me an extra 15 minutes, an extra 30 minutes, an extra hour a day. How am I going to find the time? The time is already there. You're just putting this on top of what you're already doing, right? So that's the habit stack. And that's how you can do that with multiple things, but I'm just, obviously using here for personal development. So B.B. King says the beautiful thing about learning is that no one can take it away from you, right? That's what you hear kind of people share these examples, right? They become a millionaire, you take everything away from them, they get it all back. Because it's not about, what they have, what they know, right? And so focusing on that personal development, increases your value. So pillar number 3, the people you associate with, right? The people you associate with. So as I mentioned earlier in my example, when I was working in corporate America, right, I had, what we call positive peer pressure, right? So the people I was with, they were reading, Rich Dad, Poor Dad, I Felt Left Out. So that's an example of a positive association, right? And that's ideally the type of peer pressure you want, right? The peer pressure, someone encouraging you to read a book or listen to an audio, or maybe go to the gym more often if that's one of your goals. Right? And so the question that we need to ask very simply is, first of all, identify who you are around, what are they doing to you, and ask yourself, is that okay? So really be cognizant and almost take inventory of who you're around in the course of the day. Who are the people you're speaking with on the phone? Who are the people that you're maybe texting? Who are the people you're engaging with in social media? And so the question is, who you're around, what are they doing to you, and is it okay? And you're going to find some people you need to increase your association with. So these are people, maybe they inspire you, maybe they are going to help you in achieving some sort of a life goal that you have that maybe you only spend 5 minutes with, that you need to turn into 5 hours, right, per week or per month, right? But greater than the time you're spending now. There's some people that you're going to feel, and sometimes it's emotional, right? You just feel, upset, right, or negative when they're in your space, right? These are people that you see them come in the door, you got to go out the back somewhere, right? And it might be literally in person, right? You got to just disappear, just not be in their space, right? And some of you, I know it might be family members, right? Whoever, right? But it might be some people just to keep your peace, right? You need to decrease your association with from 5 hours to 5 minutes. And then some of you might be able to cut off altogether. And these are more likely, people like on social media, right? So, maybe people on your phone, right? People on social media, on Facebook or Instagram, whatever the case would be. And you just like, if you see a post from someone and every single time you get hot, right? you get physically upset, it might be time, right, to disassociate yourself, right? To just defriend that person so you don't see that person in your feed. And I promise you, they won't even notice, right? They're not going to call you the next, I can't believe you deleted it. They're not even going to notice, right? You don't have to write a memo as to why you're defriending them. None of that, right? Just very simply go to the Facebook and defriend, and that's it, right? Facebook is not going to call you and ask you none of that, right? And so it might be something as simple as that, right? To increase your peace, right? And associate yourself with the right people. Set a game plan, right? To spend more time with those that you want to be around with more often, right? So that's number 3, right? The people you're associated with. Zig Ziglar says, you can't change what's going on around you until you start changing what's going on within you, right? And so sometimes we're focused on all these external factors, we have different things going on, and we need to focus on what's going on inside of us, right? And it is the reality. Most of the issues, most of the problems that we have are internally generated, right? We have a tendency to point fingers, right? But the whole saying, right? Every time you point fingers, you got a couple pointing back at you. So we got to take that personal responsibility. And how do you learn that? Is personal development, right? So a lot of people just haven't learned this fact, right? That we got to take responsibility, for things that are going on in our lives. And so what are some events, right? Some of you might recognize some of the folks here, maybe on your screen, but the events that you attend. But so these are some examples. Obviously, these are well-known speakers, whether you have Les Brown or Eric Thomas, or ET for short, so you have a lot of, great, speakers that, maybe you can physically go to a workshop or seminar that they're hosting. Again, all these people have books that you can read as well. But the events that you attend, right, have an impact on your personal growth as well. So it might be conferences that you go to. It might be educational seminars. So like even what we're doing today, right, is a form of, right, again, that personal growth. One of the pillars, right, the events you attend. So it doesn't matter if you're in person, if you're virtual, right? It doesn't matter how many people are there, whether you're going to a small meeting or a large group meeting, right? And then, look at what are some seminars that you want to be able to attend. What areas are you looking for personal growth and improvement in, right? So Tony Robbins, I know he's like Mr. Excitement, right? So it seems that every time you see him on, any type of social media thread, right? He's like super excited, but he focuses a lot on energy with helping people with changing their mindset, right? So maybe it's time management, maybe it's on leadership, finances, sales, family related, right? So what are some maybe educational seminars? If you go to, obviously there's seminars all the time here at the library on multiple topics, right? And so can you plug into them, right? For you, it might be at church, like literally at church this past Sunday, just like I have those book notes, I literally have a section here just for church notes, right? And so it literally everywhere you go, right, there's opportunities to learn and grow. It might be business networking, it might be community-based events, right? So just be cognizant, like that is actually a big part of your personal development, right? Is the events you attend.
I think like online too, like TED Talks, and podcasts, there's some really inspirational ones that you can find, doing a search with. And so even if you can't get to something in person, that's a great way to just treat it like an educational seminar and take notes on it.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. And that's something that ties into like audio. So typically I ask people even as it relates to audiobooks, or audios, like what are some podcasts that you typically follow? So does anyone have any folks in the Zoom can speak up too? Do you guys have any like specific like podcasts that you you follow all the, I know there's like a million podcasts now. It's crazy. Like everyone has a podcast, but are there any like maybe like your number one podcast that you follow and why? Anyone have any podcasts they follow? I know I'm more focusing on like the audiobooks, but I know Diary of a CEO. I mean, that guy's on YouTube. That's kind of like a podcast I try to follow, but his interview is like 2 hours, right? So it's like, but he always has great guests that are on there. So that's like one of like the podcasts, if you will, that I follow. I'm sure he has it like an audio format too, but usually I just have it on YouTube. I just have it playing. I just kind of listen to it, you know, as I'm going about my day. But anyone on virtual have any podcasts to recommend?
If Patrice was here, she would. My wife would have a couple of them. I kind of listen in on the stuff that she listens into. Like she likes to listen to like realtors stuff and those self-help ones, and sometimes like I'm trying to think. I can't name any specific ones, but you know, like or like like getting into like stocks and stuff like that or whatever like that. Or you know, I can't really recall because I'm not really a podcast listener. I'm more of a like a eavesdropper.
I just play and get some tips. Yeah. That's good. But yeah, if you guys think of anything, feel free to tap in the chat. Yes, I'm not, I don't have like necessarily like podcasts like that follow on a regular basis like that. So I'm like more specific. Like if I want to learn a specific topic, I just get the book or get the audio. But yeah, podcasts are a great way as well.
Yeah, Michelle Obama has a new one called In My Opinion, IMO. It's really, really good. So she brings on different speakers to talk about different topics, mostly about like family and how to like raise your children, different things like that. You know, how to have like, you know, a thriving relationship. So relationship tips and how to like be self-care for yourself, but also like be in communion with other women. So that's been something positive I've been listening to. And I also listen to Dr. Mindy Pels on, she's like a fasting expert. So I've listened to her a lot.
Yep. All right, good stuff. So yes, again, lots of great information that's available out there for free, you know, especially with the podcast as well. So Jim Rohn, another great, you know, kind of philosophy, you know, he shares is don't let your learning lead to knowledge, let your learning lead to action, right? So this goes back to not just getting through the book, but getting from it. So as it relates to kind of wrap up today, let's talk about some specific action steps. And this would be hopefully a refresher, right, for what we talked about earlier. But number one, is to calendar your commitment, right? So calendar, that's one of the most important things, I think, to make sure that it actually happens during the course of the day. If you're really focused on engaging in personal development, getting better in a specific area, but make sure you calendar that time. You know, and it doesn't, you know, whether it's daily, it's easier to create a habit when you do it daily versus, every other day. Can you like, okay, is this the day I do personal development or is it tomorrow? So as it relates to habit stacking or developing habits in general, it's better to do a little bit each and every single day than just do a lot like every other day or once a week or, you know, whatever other pattern you think of, right? So daily is ideally the best way to go about doing it. But calendar your commitment. Number two, that habit stack. So and this is just one of the examples. I gave hopefully a couple of different examples as we talked today, right? But you know, reading, listening to, you know, personal development, you know, when you're having breakfast, when you're having lunch, when you're having dinner. So you got to eat during the day, right? So habit stacking. So a lot of people, while they're eating, they're on YouTube watching a video or they're going through their Facebook feed. And all that's okay, right? You know, you could do that as well. But you know, maybe for breakfast, and especially in the beginning of the day, don't start your day that way, right? Especially in the beginning of the day, maybe for breakfast or even for lunch, you can say, you know what, that's going to be reserved exclusively for my personal development time, right? For reading a book on Kindle or living, you know, or listening to an audiobook. And then, hey, for dinner time, I could have junk food, right? Because dinner time, I could be on social media or wherever you want to do, right, in the evening time. But I would highly recommend, you have to pick a time, I highly recommend in the beginning of the day to start a positive way with some personal development, right? Because you'll find all the negativity will find you, right? If you engage in social, and that's a whole other, we do a whole seminar on time management where we talk about how to like make sure that you're intentional about how you invest in your time during the course of the day. And then lastly, number three, create a personal development game plan and goals, right? So the question that you just want to ask yourself is, how much time per day are you willing to commit? How many pages a day do you want to read? But actually having, you can't hit a target that you don't have, right? So actually having a target for how much time, how many hours, how many pages, and in what areas do you need personal development in, right? So we say personal development is just that, it's personal, right? So you might be really, really strong in some areas, but maybe you want to get better at time management. Maybe you want to, you're leading an organization, you want to get better at your leadership skills, right? Maybe your finances are not where you would like it to be, right? And you're like, man, I need to read some books and listen to audios on budgeting or finances, right? Maybe it's spiritual, maybe it's health related, right? Maybe it's family related. So what is like a specific area that you can focus on over the next 6 months, right? For the rest of the year, even, what area you want to like become an expert at, right? And focus in on that. Create a personal development game plan to learn new skills. So this is an example, right? This is a template for like becoming almost like an expert. So if you wanted to get better, for example, in your finances, right? Or time, if you read 5 books and listened to 3 audios and you actually found a seminar on that time, you will be an expert. Because guess what? No one's doing that. The average person is not, they might stumble upon right, an audiobook, right, or a podcast that talks about, but if you're that intentional, like, look, this is an area of weakness for me, and I need to be an area of strength, and you focus in, right, 5 books, 3 audios, and a seminar, you'll be an expert. Again, if you take in what you learn and have a game plan for being able to apply it as well, right? So that's pretty much it. So that's pretty much our workshop for today. We're hopefully give you a little bit of clarity and maybe set some goals as it relates to personal development, and you got some action steps you can use. I love this quote by Frank Outlaw, right? Watch your thoughts, they become words. Watch your words, they become actions. Watch your actions, they become habits. Watch your habits, they become your character, and watch your character because it becomes your destiny, right? But the foundation of it is your thoughts, right? And that ties right into personal development, being clear on what you're listening to, what you're reading, right? The people you're associating with, and the events that you attend, right, will all lead to where you want to go. So with that, I appreciate being here on today. So again, we have a survey we'll hand out, so we'll have it here. We'll type it, we'll put it in the virtual as well. I got to find the link. But I appreciate you guys being here, taking the time, right? So it shows that you're serious, right? About personal development, right? Being here in person or visiting us on the Zoom. And we will have a replay available. So if you have people who are looking to get better as it relates to personal development, let me know. If you have people who have, a need for a workshop, whether it's on personal development, we do one on time management, on goal setting. We even with Legal Shield, we do like a will education seminar. Basically what Legal Shield does gives you access to your own attorneys for less than $30 a month. So one of the benefits is the will preparation. So we do seminars on workshops on that as well. And then even like different sales trainings on follow-ups as well. And then one new one that we just developed is really focus on developing consistency, because that's usually a challenge where people have any goal in life is not being consistent. So we have a new, kind of workshop we put together specifically on how to be consistent with whatever that goal is. So whether it's your health goals, working out, financial, whatever the case may be, right? It's kind of the 3 kind of cornerstones to consistency is basically what it's called there. So in any event, so those are some of the workshops that we have. But thank you for joining us. So feel free if you guys have anything you want to share, whether you're on the virtual, for the folks on the virtual, we'll try to put the link in here. And then we'll have like we'll have a physical printout too, of like the personal development books that we recommend. So, but thank you guys for being here and joining us here on the book.